Welcome to the Mary Mavis Show, the show that focuses on remarkable results and your personal power. Here is your host, Mary Mavis.
I am honored today to welcome my guest, Marc Ceusters. Marc is a consultant to life sciences companies focusing on scientific advice about new therapies in mental health, strategic advice on disease identification for new biological targets, and on mentoring and coaching for project leaders. Marc's value to his clients is his deep scientific drug development expertise and his exceptional team leader experience. I met Marc 4 years ago when he was one of 7 cross-functional team leaders who hired me to work with all of the cross-functional teams at Janssen in the early development program to up their game in terms of their team membership. Marc joins us from Belgium today. Marc, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mary, for having me. I'm really looking forward to it.
Great. So let's talk teams today. You are an exceptional team leader. You have a strong reputation for that. And we're going to focus in on an experience that you had where your team was full ahead, strong plan, endorsement from governance, and there was a disruption to the plan. There was a pivot that needed to get made. And what you did to bring the team back into alignment, because they weren't in alignment around that change. So tell us the story. Let's begin there with your story about what happened.
Yeah. This was a project at my times at Janssen. I call this a high priority biological target, which means, there's a lot of eyes of management on how the project is progressing. But it was a project with problems or issues, like you can say. This meant that we developed a plan on, let's do the critical experiments as soon as possible and see whether we have a go or no-go moving forward. We did that, and we actually had a no-go, if you think a no-go in the sense of the data. The data were not really supportive to move forward. So we actually, as a team, sort of came to the decision, or the recommendation, I should say, let's stop this project. We did the right experiment at the right moment in time. It's not giving the results that we were hoping for. So let's go to governance, to management, and say, stop this project. But as I mentioned at the start, this is a high priority target. So actually, we were surprised by governance saying to us, no, you have to turn around every stone and we'll try to look for other ways, other opportunities to keep on going with this project, which was a big surprise to us. But then you have to think about that I had to give this message back to the team. Most of the team members were at this governance meeting, but you have to explain why this is happening, because the why is usually not explained at these governance meetings. So I started to explain to my team about, how important this target is for the company and for our therapeutic area. And that really was the main driver of the decision. So it has nothing to do with the way on what the team did, but on the importance of the target. The problem that really was there is that, mentally, almost every team member had already given up on the project, and they were looking to other projects and other teams. So I was tasked in a way to get everyone on board again. And I really, had a few conversations with people and thought about what's the best way on how to get, this team and this project back on track again, with a different strategy, of course. And I think 2 important things sort of came to my mind is, one, I want to hear everyone's opinion on how they feel and how they potentially see the future of them, each individually, in the project moving forward. So I think very important is about knowing how they felt about it, but also whether they thought, I still see a future for myself in this team, knowing that actually the decision is not my decision. And I was sort of, well, I should say, not really surprised by the feedback. You could say like half of the people were willing to continue, where the other half of the people actually had really difficulties on, staying with the team and really, aligning with the decision of management. The solution I thought about was, well, I actually gave all team members the opportunity to step out of the team if they mentally really felt like, I can no longer commit myself fully 100% with the strategy of the project moving forward. So I allowed them to say, well, if you want to step out, you can. But if you stay in with the decision of management, and let's work then together out on a new strategy and make that a success. I was surprised by the result of it, because everyone stayed on the team. Although half of them said that they mentally had a really difficulty in saying, I'm not fully behind this decision of management. When I gave them the opportunity to either leave or stay, they all stayed. The good thing about this that I almost had a new team, because you almost never speak out commitments of people to a team. This is actually what I did at that moment in time. I gave people the opportunity to stay or leave, and if they stayed, it's of course with a full commitment. And that was unique. And when I think about that, it's like, when I probably was like 10 years younger than now, I probably would never come up with that proposal or even, had the guts to do that type of sort of.
And what would you have done? What would you have done?
That's a good thing. I thought about that. It's sort of like, what's the alternative? And likely the alternative was that, I probably didn't have the conversation that I had now.
Yeah.
And
you just would have moved forward. So here's where we are. Here's what we're doing.
Yeah. No explanation on the why. No actually asking the feedback of the people. Now it actually helped me to know, like, if someone during, for example, the months thereafter and during a team meeting, if someone was hesitant, if that was a person who basically was, well, on the side of the leavers, if I may call it like that, I could understand better why they were sort of giving that remark or not. So it helped me a lot to understand how people thought, and then also to put their reactions, their comments, their words in the right context. And, I think I probably in the past just would have said, let's continue. And then probably I think the team would have exploded after 2 or 3 months. So, yeah.
And so in the for our listeners, in the context of this team, how many years had the team been working on this particular project?
That must have been about 1 year together. Yeah.
1 year together. They get to the point where they're making a recommendation. My guess is it wasn't an easy recommendation to make. It was a disappointing recommendation to make, for sure, because no drug development team wants to say, we recommend we stop this project.
Yeah, that is true. It is like you say, a difficult decision to make, to say, let's stop this project. And in a way, sometimes it requires courage to do so, because you can always think about a next experiment that you can do. But sometimes you have to say, no, okay, let's make the decision now and make the recommendation to stop. We made a plan, let's stick to the plan. And I think that's what I, in a way, really sort of thought about that team and still think about that team, and why it was amazing is because, we were clear from the start about high priority target, but a compound with issues. We knew it was not going to be easy, and we were willing to do what you can call like the killer experiment. That's also, I think, unique. You're willing to do that, And if that mindset is there, I think that all helps again to then come to a certain decision and recommendation to stop. I think if you sort of get into that, sort of like all minds open and you think about everything is possible, then it's probably, more difficult to stop a project. So
did your decision to step back and give people a choice to be on the project or not, did that make you feel vulnerable as the team leader?
Yes. Yeah.
So that was courageous also, because if half of the people, particularly if one of the key roles, they're all key, they're all important roles, but there are certain roles on a project team like that if you have somebody who leaves, who's been in it for a year, it's a pretty big chair to fill, right? So, absolutely. So what was going through in your mind about, or was it about what the impact would be on you as a team leader?
Well, like you can always sort of do, I think as a team leader, two things. Is one, you have your point of view and you impose your point of view to the team. Yeah? Likely always the fastest scenario. Yeah? I'm not sure on the long term that it's the best scenario, because actually the risk of losing part of your team is much higher, because they don't follow your reasoning. It's just my nature, Mary, to not do that. It's for me important. Although I will admit, I have made up my mind on what I want personally. Yeah?
Right.
I'm willing to say it to everyone, but I'm hesitant, and I will talk about it in a minute. But I'm for sure want to know everyone's opinion, because I'm willing to change my mind based on what people are saying. And if there are good arguments, I'm willing to do so. The reason why I'm sometimes hesitant to start this type of exercise where you want to hear everyone's opinion, and I start first, because I'm the leader, some people will not go against my opinion because of the fact that I'm the leader. So that's why I'm hesitant to usually start with myself in these type of exercises. And I think that's an important learning, that a leader, your impact is actually bigger than you think. And you might be sort of very, very open and transparent in your communication, but there are anyhow people that look at you and find your opinion important. And so that's why I'm hesitant. And actually, I sort of said in these type of exercises, I've done this multiple times, I am always the last to say what my opinion is.
And even if you're last, Marc, the reality is if your team members know you, the way that you present back from governance about the go forward decision that governance made, because it wasn't the team's decision, they probably intuit, where you stand. So you really have to facilitate in that case, making sure you're getting at the true thinking of each of the team members.
Yeah. Now, I think there's another important aspect to this, that when you think about teams, and you talked about how long was the team together, I think that's an important one. You have to do this at sort of after 1 month. This is almost impossible to do, in my opinion, because the team doesn't know itself, basically. It doesn't know the team members. Also, in this case, for this project, I'm very keen on always having a face-to-face kickoff meeting, and this happened 9 months before this event in a way. And that's an important one, because there you get to know your team, and actually get to know the people who are sitting on your team. And for me, that's important to understand how they think and how they feel. I remember we had, for example, one team member who was truly an introvert, really very, if you ask her opinion, she was always very inconvenient to talk about it, although it could be an extremely valuable opinion. So if you know that from the start, you know that as well, if you want to approach such a person, you need to approach her in a certain way to make her comfortable to at least say her opinion. So and there's always a path to an event that happens, but I think that's an important path as well. So the investment in getting to know your team, certainly in this case, paid off in a way. But later, with this sort of difficult decision and change in direction.
So how did the team move forward? What's the next stage of the story?
Well, the next stage of the story is that we actually took the advice of management on, you have to look at every stone and turn every stone to see if there is another way to move forward. The way how we approached is that, so this was about a project we licensed in from another company. And we did not license in just one compound. It were multiple compounds. So although we focused initially on one compound, we actually made the decision on, well, if this one is not good enough, maybe we need to look back at other ones, and maybe there are other ones better, knowing what we have learned from the first compound. And that really was the approach we took. And then said like, okay, let's now look at the other compounds, define a strategy, keep on comparing all compounds, and at the end come up with a plan that is best, in a way of a portfolio of compounds rather than just this one single compound. And I think that helped the team really, focus again on, okay, we have something to move forward with, and again define a strategy and a plan, etc.
So it had a positive outcome.
No, in the end.
No, in the end, you turned over every stone, and
no. In the end, it were 3 compounds, and in the end, we had to give up. But again, that was then after 3 years, and not after 1 year. After 3 years, we had to say, well, we turned every stone. And then management, by the way, agreed to say, like, we need to stop with this. You as a team, did a marvelous job on, getting the most out of the project. Unfortunately, you can't get more out of than what is possible. And we actually got the same comments from our licensing partner, who said, like, what you have done, guys, as a team, I've never seen before. You should be congratulated for turning every stone, so to speak. So
were there emotional highs and lows as you went through that process post disruption for the team? Did you sometimes it sounds like you got a commitment individually, but were there points at which you found the alignment sort of needing to have some patchwork?
Yes, of course. Because one of the other events that happened, and I don't know exactly the sequence of events anymore, is that again, it's in a way on who I am, is I look for opportunities. And with this project, I think it was a nice example of turn every stone, try to come up with a strategy, look at different possibilities and opportunities. And, at some point in time, we were faced that 2 of the team members were actually sort of, I use the metaphor of the train in the train station here.
Yeah.
2 of the members, including myself and sort of my clinical leader, we were in the locomotive, and we left the station and we didn't look back. And actually, my team members were still on the train station on the platform. They didn't even step into the wagons. And then you think about, well, that's wrong, because then you have a sort of misalignment in your team where 2 people are sort of going in one direction, and actually we forgot to explain to the others what we were thinking and why we were thinking. And it is due to one person on the team, and I never forget that person, because he was so brave to pick up the phone and said, can I speak with you? And I want to do it face to face, because I want to explain you something. And he then came to my office and explained, like, well, he said, I don't understand where you're going at. And that reminded me about, well, okay, I went here, 10 steps too fast. And next team meeting, I need to go back 10 steps and take everyone along. And that's what you have to do from time to time as well. And I learned from that what I call, from time to time, you need to step out of your project, I call that. Take this helicopter view on where are you with the project, and to be mindful about, okay, is everything and is the strategy clear to everyone in the team? And haven't I forgotten any people because they have become silent on the team? And then, if they have become silent on a team, and if you know that they're usually not silent, then you know that there is something wrong. And not everyone is that brave to come to my office and talk about it. Others remain silent, but in a way they show that they are not happy in another way. But that's important to learn. Absolutely.
So it's a great example of a concept that I talk about in my book, which is, the language I used was get above the battlefield.
Yeah.
So whether you want to use a battlefield or not, get above the playing field. For a sports analogy, get up on the balcony for entertainment event and see what you see. And what I love about the story is that it took a courageous team member to even remind you, I need to elevate, take a look, get up in that helicopter and really think about where people are, because and it's so easy to do because you spent time getting a commitment. I'm committed to the team. Well, what does that mean? It means I'm committed to do my job in the context of this redirection, a different path than we recommended. But alignment is really a different thing.
Yeah,
and it starts with knowing where you are and where you're going, right?
Yeah.
So you can easily have people just not know.
Yeah. It's like you say, I think, Mary, as well, about the what, the how, and the so what. This is truly about the so what. It's your explanation of the bigger picture. In many ways, and this goes in the bigger picture on why is this so important to the therapeutic area, but also how important is your team and how important it is to get everyone aligned in your team. You really need to take time and spend time on that. So what the impact on what it can have, like a misalignment in team, misalignment with management, whatever. It requires an investment, and that's definitely something. I learned over the years is, sometimes people say like, why do you do these kickoff meetings? You lose time and you should focus on the strategy. Well, I said, no, my half day or 1 day investment in the team will pay off years thereafter. And,
yes.
I strongly believe that. It's, yeah.
Yes. Knowing your people, knowing yourself, being able to think about stepping back with your team and then lifting yourself up over the team. And hopefully, who knows when you might have found that what was going on if you didn't have that courageous team member around.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm pretty sure it would have come up at some point in time, but I think you would have lost valuable months.
Yes.
Yes. That I think, and we sometimes say that the R&D process takes a long time, but sometimes individual steps can have a big impact. Although it's just the 3 to 4 months of a delay. Sometimes it can lead to the wrong decision, and that's then really a catastrophe, so to speak.
The other reason I love this example of getting alignment is alignment doesn't necessarily mean agreement.
Yeah, that's true.
And that was really what you had to do, was you had to say, this isn't about whether you agree. We all came to a recommendation that we all agreed with. Now we've gotten a directive that we need to get aligned around. We need to have commitment to, and I'm asking you to either make that commitment or say that you can't. And then, I think it's a real challenge in teams to self-identify when you're aligned with where the team is going as a team member, and to, as a team leader, lift up above, particularly when you're having some signals that people may not be aligned, to lift up and then take action, because you certainly have a big task list to do. So you have to really pay attention and stop yourself.
Yeah. I think that's the right word. From time to time, you have to stop yourself before you sort of leave the station again. So
that's a wonderful, wonderful example, Marc. I think that it's a difficult challenge, no matter what level of team you're working with, whether it's a leadership team, a project team, an initiative team, and your wisdom is truly valuable. So, Marc, one of the chapters, and we've talked about this a lot in the past, is called People Are Funny. And it means we're all unique. We have our pluses and minuses. And it all is based on where we come from. So I'm going to ask you, how are you funny? And I don't mean funny, haha. I mean, how are you challenging for people that work with you? What are the things that you know about yourself that you believe or know are challenging for other people?
I think the big thing is, as you know, Mary, I'm a lot driven by passion, everything that sort of gives me a lot of what I call positive energy and drive. That's really, important for me. Now, that is the big drawback. Sort of once I'm sort of in the mood and of sort of like this high passion, I talk too much, and that really is.
I can't
important.
believe that.
It's true.
You talk too much. So say how that. Give me a feeling for the scenario and how that becomes a challenge for other people.
Yeah. Well, when I say I talk too much, it means I don't listen enough. Yeah?
Oh.
And that's in that context I want to say. There is talking and there's talking. Yeah?
Right.
But I think if you want to sort of work together with people, and that's what I truly want, you have to listen. There is, I think, sort of like this proverb that says, silent and listen have the same letters. Yeah? And another one that I truly like is like, there is a reason why nature gave us one mouth and two ears.
Yes.
And I find that so important. But that's really, for me, the difficulty that I should say to people is like, when I'm sort of into my passion and talk about it, I forget to listen. And it's important. You have to stop from time to time. Right. And listen to what other people saying. Otherwise, you're losing important information on what the other person has to say.
So does that mean that you get up on your stage and, in a sense, speak to your passion and what needs to happen and how important it is, and you don't really create space for people to challenge you?
Yes. Or one, challenge me. Second is to give enough time for people to give their thoughts and opinion about the same subject.
Yes. I think you take a lot of airspace in those times when you are really passionate.
Yeah. And it's important, and how to deal with that. What I certainly do quite often with my teams is, be open about who I am and what in a way my challenges are. So I think that's important to give people that sort of that notice, or
right.
Like I have a disclaimer, and that they can interrupt me. And so if you sort of tell people that they can do that. Not everyone will do that, for sure. I think not in first instance, but after a few times, I think hearing that, they will do it. So that's a little bit sort of the disclaimer, if you may call it like that, I would like to use when I start to work with new teams. It's I can talk a lot, but you can challenge me about shut up, listen, I have also something to say.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so you're a very self-aware leader. You've been at the business for a long time. As I said in my introduction, you're really an expert in the science side of it, but you're also exceptional as a team leader. And so you've spent time thinking about yourself as a team leader. And, it's interesting in a lot of these episodes, people have talked about that, the wisdom of sharing what you know about yourself so that, people can have ideas. So what if there's a person, what if someone works for a person, and maybe you've had someone that this is like that, where they're really passionate about their perspective, they have a strong point of view, they're not really listening, they're not as self-aware as you are, or have proclaimed, call a timeout and get me to listen to you if I'm running on. What can people do in those scenarios? Can you think of a situation where you've had to do that with someone senior to you?
Well, actually, I have to think about someone who was in my team, and I think you describe a lot on sort of what that person was. In a way, the person was very knowledgeable. So if you think about process and the knowledge of the organization, if you sort of asked for his sort of annual feedback to people who worked with him, you always got this feedback. Well, he knows the ins and outs, but there was always a but. Yeah? And the but was also always about how. So how that person was perceived by others was always the problem. He was someone who really was strong in conversations, strong in discussions, over talking other people. Yeah. The problem was he was not aware of that. Yeah?
Right.
Some companies have this instrument of a 360 feedback. Yeah?
Right.
Which I think helps a lot about the self-awareness, because I think for me, what I learned over the years, if there is a lack of self-awareness, that's a huge and a big problem. Yeah? And if the person doesn't accept that there is a lack of self-awareness, I always sort of had really difficulties in managing that person, because you can talk a lot with that person, you can do coaching, but if the lack of self-awareness is there, I call this almost like the worst situation. And which means, sometimes you have to say, well, our roads have to split here, because, this will not work out. If, on the other hand, they are willing to work around are becoming self-aware, listening to what other people are giving as feedback, then you have something sort of like a coaching process that you can follow in a way to try to improve on that. So, but for me, that self-awareness is a very crucial thing in understanding yourself and moving forward, to a next step or to a possible next step. So, yeah.
Yeah, and so I'll just offer another idea related to the person who's not self-aware, and it is a strong part of the book, which is go in the door that they're standing in. So if you're working with somebody who has a big passion and they're talking a lot, one of the ways to go right in that door, just walk right in where they are, which is, that's an exciting perspective that you have. And I have a question that I could use your help with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So rather than waiting for them to finish or, complaining about them, go in the door that person is standing in. So anyway, so good. So you're you're a funny person. And thank you for letting us know how.
You're welcome.
The third part of the interview is what's your personal power? So this is not about the authority power. This is about who you are, how you're able to, an aspect of who you are, a way that you think, something that is an attribute of yours that you see as really central to your success. What's your personal power, Marc?
I think, Mary, it does not come to a surprise if I tell you that I'm much more or a stronger believer in the talents that people have rather than the competencies that people have. And I think to what you're saying about, what's your personal power, I think you need to know what your talents are, because in a way, a talent is something that you can use in multiple circumstances, which can be private, which can be in your family, can be different teams, and sort of when I thought about what's my key talent, and I must say, if you would ask me at the age of 25 what my talent was and what I would say now, that would be totally different. But I think my strong talent is about seeing and making connections. And I think it's truly about these two things. It's seeing them, because I think, making connections is one thing, but I think you need to see them as well on, where, a certain connection, which can be a scientific connection, but can be a personal connection, can make a difference. It's really, bringing the right people together, or sort of bringing two publications together and say, hey guys, this makes sense if you bring these together. That really is, I think, my strong talent. And if you think then about how to use that is over sort of a period of, I should say, 10 years, at Janssen, we have been working sort of in a program, which in a way all had to do with sort of what's your personal power, and actually make people aware that they actually have more personal power than they think.
Yeah.
And if you try to translate that and things like, okay, what does this mean now on what I can do in a big organization? It meant for us like, well, we have an idea. Can we do this? Yes. Second question is, should we ask permission to do it, or should we just start with it? And if someone is against it, they have to tell us. And if you think about things that you can do, we have done multiple things. And in a way, this is how we got to know each other, working on these early development teams as well. This is something that started from a group of people that thought around the same lines and said, like, this is what we need to do. We had never asked someone permission to do it.
Right.
In the end, we did it, but we had it we asked it about, when we had something already running, so to speak. So I think there is much more, and I strongly believe that in a way, in your own circle of influence, there's much more you can do with your personal power than you think.
Yeah. And do you wish you knew that when you were 25?
No, I certainly didn't know that, not at all. If I would have known that, then probably would have made different decisions. Yeah.
Was it present for you? Like, can you see that it was there, but you just didn't use it as much?
No, it wasn't there.
Okay. So you've developed that over the years.
I don't know. I don't know if I sort of developed it over the years. Maybe I should correct a little bit on what I said. It is because I have seen it with others that I stood up and said, I can do this myself as well. So maybe it was there unconsciously. I never knew about it, but it is because I saw it with others and saw it being successful that I just said, okay, why can't I do that? Yeah. So in a way, it was maybe present, but unconsciously. Yeah.
And now, Marc, as you've initiated this year a new practice of consulting, finding the marriage between science and great teaming. I can't wait for the connections that you create. So thank you very much for being on the show today.
You're welcome. Thanks, Maddie, for having me again.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Today's show was produced by Eric Aubrey. Our theme music was written and produced by Eric Aubrey and Tim McKinstry. The show's graphics were designed by Devin Marciano. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on Google, Apple, or Spotify. You can also find episodes at maviscompany.com, where I invite you to sign up for my weekly newsletter. I hope you use some nugget to help you create remarkable results in your world. Thank you for listening.